All right, we're going to talk today about the Rio Grande River, the Rio Grande. It is a grand river. You know, through our documentaries, we've run several series of events up and down the Rio Grande, and I just want to remind you, in as much as we will be going to Del Rio, the city that is called the Queen City of the Rio Grande, an old city, but a city also where we'll go 40 miles inland up a lake to Panther Cave. But as we go there, and it was quite a boat trip, but it's a very interesting boat trip for those of you that would like to make it someday. And thank goodness we do have professional guides in that area, which you'll be introduced to. I know you'll like it. But first, on the Rio Grande, I want you to picture how did all these people that we have documented come to the Rio Grande River in Texas. We know that ships, the Vikings, the Celts, the Iberians, the Israelites, many people have traveled this river. Let's take first, if we may, we'll go the farthest north to Los Lunas, which is the moon in Spanish. And there we found the 10 Commandments in Paleo-Hebrew, ancient Hebrew. And through personal history of the ranch and the family, we know how many years ago it was that this was found on this stone. It wasn't placed there recently, even by modern day history. And inasmuch as one of the letters was not understood until 1906, if my memory serves me well, that we know that it existed long before 1906 from personal history in that area. So how beautiful that we would have these 10 Commandments, as you will see pictured, and on top of this mountain, even if you would, the 4 signs, the zodiac, documenting a solar eclipse that took place in the year 146 BC. How ancient this river has, how well it has served both modern and ancient man. But the 10 Commandments lets us know, especially with the language so well written, and these 10 Commandments which ancient man respects perhaps more than man today. Hopefully there are still those of the remnant, as we well know. And then, leaving this great mountain, we have found Ogum. And I suppose that Waco tanks out of El Paso, Texas, which would be upriver from Del Rio, which we will be making this trip on. El Paso, the Waco tanks, meaning water in Spanish, that really it was a water tank. The lava, or the upheaval that took place there and formed these great mountains, these are so very unusual, used for climbing in a state park today. But take a look at these ancient Iberian burial masks, meaning that an Iberian was buried very near this place. And I refer to the one on top of the ceiling there, so beautifully displayed. Ancient people, you bet, Iberians. And then here at Waco Tanks as well, we have the word water side by side with the Iberian word water, and in Ogum, the Celtic word for water. Now think about that a moment. 2 different peoples, the same geographical location, and just a few steps from this particular writing was a huge basin. And if you'll remember, David was standing inside this basin, documenting that the words were there for a reason. There was a water shelter there. And in a desert land, which I would say roughly that Waco Tanks is about 40 miles from the Rio Grande, that they had this water there as they explored. And as we observe people, let's go back for a moment, if we may, as ships traveled, and God said, I will scatter my people all over the world. He really has. And this simply documents that His word is all the more true. So at Waco Tanks, how beautiful that we see these things. Mountains today that are used by climbing. I know that many of these signs have been desecrated even since the time we were there. I'm glad that we were able to preserve them. Sometimes to make an area a state park that is just really open to people and not staffed as full perhaps as it should be. They do an excellent job, do the best they can, we will say that. But certainly a park such as this with so much history, a little extra staff would never hurt. Waco Tanks, Texas. Now, when we go north from the Waco Tanks, if you go all the way to the Truth or Consequences, the TRC as many call it today, we found ancient relics in the museum there in the city of Truth or Consequences, there on the river, the dam rather, the dam site there we'll call it. This museum has ancient artifacts from one called Elephant Island, but as you will see, and as we revisit here for a moment, that you can see these relics found here, even from the first Earth age. Fascinating. The Rio Grande River. Down through the ages of time. The people that came here. The people that visited here. And then at the same time, in an area just south of Truth or Consequences, down just off of Hatch, we visited an area where exciting to us, one of the places where the miniature rattlesnake is protected by the state law, and certainly you would like to hear them rattle a little louder than what they do, but here are palm trees from that first Earth age. Palm trees that are actually extremely hard stone at this time on a mountaintop in the middle of the desert today, where if you were to plant a fresh palm tree in this area today and leave it unattended, within 1 week it would be a goner, a dead sucker, I'll tell you for sure. But here you have these beautiful stumps of palm trees left, letting us know the signs and the times of our Father's creation. This world, many years, through the years. How fascinating. And the gentleman that took us here, what a gentleman he is. We really enjoyed his showing us this area. If we were to go to another location, which I'm not at liberty to give you, and very near this river, or its passing, we have a footprint, an angelic footprint, because it's over 10 million years old by a considerable length. What an awesome sight. Just off the Rio Grande River, so even in that time it must have been a pretty popular place. We know that angelic remains are not flesh, therefore there are no flesh remains, but inasmuch as we know that angelic food sustain man, that there is a mass, and certainly inasmuch as we are made in their image, their foot looks exactly like ours. Awesome, yes. True, very true. God's very truth unfolds in the Rio Grande River Valley from one end to the other. That is such an important feature of this great river. I wonder when it was named the Rio Grande, what a grand old river it is. And again, the city we will be visiting, Del Rio, the queen of that river. In all these travels, in all these times as well, not only was Ogham found at Waco Tanks in one word, but look at this beautiful panel from the area near where Doc Noss's gold was found on this particular peak. You have one of the most beautiful Ogham panels that can be found not only in the Rio Grande River Valley, but anywhere that Ogham is found. This panel in Ogham, and we thank Dr. Barry Fell, bless his heart, that much of the translating was done by him, some of it by yours truly. After we lost Dr. Fell when he passed on to the Father some time back, but how it still, in a sense, is Dr. Fell doing it, in as much as I had the privilege of studying under him. Now, here is this panel at Victoria's Peak, which was that great Apache chief named for him. We have a panel that reads, "This mine contains ore." It contains metallic ore. I, McGehee, claim it for my own personal profits. This Ogham is of the type that would have been used around 800 or 900 AD. Vowelless, but in red ochre or iron oxide, whichever you prefer, done here in this great Rio Grande Valley. This drawing would be about 60 to 80 miles north of Waco tanks. Then farther north than this, again from Victoria Peak, we go north of Hatch along the river, and we come to a time when there were travelers that were leery of a people that were not like their people, which naturally was no doubt in 800 or 900 AD, part of our Native Americans that were living by the river, as many of them did in this area. What a beautiful area. And we find this beautiful panel of Ogham, which states, "Be careful when you go by the willows. There is a people there that is not of our kindred." And then yet another panel from this same area that would say, "Be careful when you go by the willows," or it could turn into a battlefield. And then the beautiful rebus, where the word actually meaning battlefield is a rebus that gives you what the battle lines would be, and it matches with the river in that particular area. All this was an accident, and as some would say, they're plow marks. They don't plow in the desert. Never have, and certainly written in a very distinguishable alphabet, where if one knows the language, it's very easy to translate. On San Diego Mountain, we observed a very hot trip and a very steep climb. But we deserved pictographs and petroglyphs, even if you would, of a man with a beard. Now, as you know, our Native Americans most usually do not have beards. And you see a face here of a European. And then we find this type of writing, much of it here, very ancient, that we find the same writing in Ireland on Ogham Fallow's tomb, which many of us believe to be the tomb of Jeremiah the prophet. And this particular ancient writing, I feel that we have deciphered much of it, that we do understand it at this time. And how fascinating it is that from Ireland all the way to the Rio Grande River, as ships would pass the Atlantic Ocean, no doubt hugging Greenland, Iceland, Newfoundland, down the coast of Florida, around the Keys, working their way into the Gulf of Mexico, and then coming down into the opening of that Rio Grande River. A river that opened the Southwest like a highway to these various peoples, Iberians, Celts, Israelites, all, along with the Native American, which we're going to visit some in this particular trip. Some of their works, signs, languages, and religions that they left for us to behold. And these all, when you're passing through the country and you see these ancient monuments, protect them, help take care of them. By that I mean, don't leave trash and don't try to add to, because it does great damage to our heritage and those early travelers that passed this way, that passed through and into this great nation, being scattered throughout the world as Almighty God stated that He would. Fascinating place, the Rio Grande River. I would highly recommend Del Rio and the beautiful lake Amistad, which means the Amistad Reservoir, which has Old Mexico on one side and Texas or America on the other side. And we observed many wonderful things. I want to tell you a little bit about Panther Cave. And picture, if you would, and the reason I have gone through this layout, if you would, of the visitors through this, that these American natives observed these travelers. Were they influenced by them? Well, in certain cases. But we're going to visit on this 40-mile trip by boat on the Amistad Reservoir up the Rio Grande River, Panther Cave. Panther Cave is among the most spectacular remaining pictographs sites in the Lower Pecos region. The National Park Service and the Texas Parks and Wildlife Division jointly manage this site for the enjoyment of the public. Because of the site's popularity, a tall chain-link fence was erected by the Texas Historical Foundation across the mouth of the shelter to prevent vandalism. You're going to find one little resident behind that, one of the friendliest little squirrels that enjoys people. If you get to make the trip there also. Visitors to the site can get an unobstructed view through camera portholes that made in the fence. The pictographs at this site are among some of the largest and oldest on the North American continent. This is what makes it kind of special. The images may be 3,000 to 4,000 years old. This site has been very important to archaeologists and scientists who have used the many pictographs to define types, styles, and phrases not used of the extensive overpainting. The pictographs here are rapidly deteriorating from a variety of natural causes. Cracks in the limestone wall. Above some pictographs are now seeping water following heavy rains. Pictographs can also become mantled by mud dauber nest. The wasp nest can be removed with slight surface damage, but only after meticulous effort. Wasps also build their nest in the minute holes and pores in the rock, which cause the holes to enlarge. Pictographs are there on these walls for several thousand years. They've decorated the walls for several thousand years. How many more years will they remain? Well, hopefully with the wonderful care they're getting, they're going to remain there for a long time. I think that I was able to understand something more as the shaman we see here and shaman that we observed at Virginia Peak. You might compare the shaman, and I think we will do that. I think we will show you, if we may, during some of the shaman from Victoria Peak, even at this time, to let you see the magnificent pictograph. But at the same time, I want you to notice that on the shaman at Virginia Peak, we had the one that had buttons. So we see a strong influence there of man other than Native American. But these shaman, inasmuch as most of the dead were buried in mats, we could call it a mat made from grass or hemp or a hemp-like substance, that you could see the shaman allowing these rolled mats to go upward, which I have no doubt means their spirits released into the heavens. This is the area, the country of Judge Roy Bean. And if you travel that way, make sure you drop by and see his old place. Law west of the Pecos, a hard man, but many said a fair man. Many said not so fair. But be that as it may, what a fantastic place. I want you to see, if you will, a picture, and we'll get you a close-up of this, of our 40-mile trip up the Rio Grande River from Del Rio all the way up through and to Panther Cave. We'll get you a real good close-up on this so that you can see this river and see the area. It is marked with buoys for those of you that have your own boats that wish to travel that area. And in using your own boat, certainly make sure that you understand the distance and that you have enough fuel, for certainly it is not a place that you would want to run out of fuel. Now, with much wildlife in the area, you will pass one old Spanish ranch in Mexico. You will see it. There will be an old tower that it was there, even modern enough that they had a shower, so to speak, rigged there. And that old shower is about all that's left of that particular ranch, the headquarters, the hacienda, the master hacienda or headquarters to the ranch. You're going to find this very interesting, because not only did we see bluff dwellers or caves in which people lived, Panther Cave and others, that there were shelters, and they were bluff dwellers. But I want you to take a look at this as we cruise the river, that there are bluff dwellers still there to this day. Bluff dwellers still there. You see, half of this lake is in Old Mexico. Therefore, the Mexican citizenry have access to the lake as well as Americans. And you have these Mexican fishermen that actually fish the lake, and then people from the Mexican side come up and buy these fish from the cave dwellers here along this modern day. Notice the refrigerator, which no doubt is propane or butane operated, that keep the fish cool, no doubt, their catch for the day until they take it to their roadside market. Very isolated, but there you got it. So do people change? Bluff dwellers of today. And now we will proceed on down the river, as you will observe the documentary, and find the place where there were bluff dwellers anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. The marina was very helpful to us there in Del Rio in allowing us to use their equipment, and they were very helpful. And those of you that need any supplies in that line, I want to highly recommend that marina. And there's really only one there at Amstead Dam, and they'll give you real good service. They were certainly good to us, and we highly recommend them. If you've never traveled that distance by boat, you might want to talk to someone there if you go without a guide, because certainly when you get 40 miles upriver, then if anything goes wrong, you need to let someone know you're up there, all right? And they are good to and give helpful advice in that way. I say that because many times a tenderfoot will decide to do something of this nature without the experience, and you can get in a heap of trouble, and I would not want to lead anyone into that. I think probably because it is so out of the way yet so convenient, that perhaps this is why that it is in such good condition, not to mention the fact that the state and the federal government have preserved these places. They've done a good job. So there you have it. Hempstead, Del Rio, Texas. If you ever travel through that way, I highly recommend that you look over some of the dwelling places and the pictographs of a people that have long since moved on, but their beautiful work and their religion. I have no doubt that Panther Cave is a very religious place, was and still is, really. It seems that if you are very sensitive to the Spirit, it seems that you can feel with awe and respect the work that went into this. That is to say, to put the people that originally put the pictographs there, and the beautiful work, their association with animal life, because animal life was their life inasmuch as they lived from the animal kingdom, one sort or one phase of it or the other, as their livelihood as well as their clothing. So again, without repeating myself, I highly recommend this area. It's a wonderful area, and it's certainly a place that can be appreciated and enjoyed. Again, I want to remind you, always do your best wherever you are out in the wildernesses that you protect these particular areas. That's why we have them, that we can document today, and that our children and even their children might see what used to be in this great nation that we call America, as well as the other Americas, that is to say South America, Mexico, which you will see part of in this particular film. Wildlife being plentiful, as you will see. So, sit back. I know you will enjoy it. Quite a boat ride. A little chilly. Well, yes, it was done in November, so that's an interesting time to make a 40-mile boat trip in the Rio Grande. But it's far enough south that it's even comfortable there at that time. So, this beautiful place, sit back, enjoy history and time of the past. All right, here we are in Texas. Great state, large state, and we're in one of the most beautiful spots as far as lakes go. And I'm going to introduce you to the man that, a professional guide in this area that brought us here. And we had a fantastic boat trip, about 40 miles. It can be shorter at different times of the year. But I'm going to introduce you to him and let him tell you a little bit about this great cave that we're at here. I think you'll enjoy it. Mr. Charlie Rumfield. Charlie, thanks for having us.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Glad to be here with you.
And could you tell us a little bit about the cave?
Yes, sir, I sure can. The Panther over here at the far right with the long tail is what the cave is named after. They call this the Panther Cave, and it's one of the most spectacular caves that is in this area that has to do with rock art. This particular painting of the Panther can be seen all the way across the canyon back behind us to an area where you can walk by trail and get to this area. It's a hiking trail over on the Seminole Canyon State Park. Most of these paintings are things that we really don't know exactly what they mean. We just can take a guess at it. They were a group of people, evidently, that had a religion dealing with the shaman or the medicine man type of religion. And this one big painting right here in front of us is called the Panther Shaman. The shaman was one of the tribesmen who supposedly could transfer from the human body to the spirit world, and he had more power than anyone else in the tribe. And a lot of these paintings were centered around that type of religion, as far as what we can tell. Some of these paintings, they're just not any way of telling what they are, and of course it's been 3,000 years ago probably that the last person that painted these were alive, so most of the secrets that has to do with these paintings were buried with the people that painted them long ago. So we just have to take a look at it and try to guess what they mean. Mr. Murray, look, there's a live one right there.
Yeah, I sure do. Little gray squirrel.
Looks like a squirrel. There was one called the Sun Shaman, I believe, and I think it's this right over here. I don't know how they, how they figure that, but it's evidently they took a look at what was the strongest type of animal in the area, and then that's what they patterned their shamanistic beliefs after. And of course the cougar or the puma was the biggest animal around this part of the country at that time, and I suppose still is as far as wild animals.
This would have made a really nice shelter year-round. It really would have.
They say that a lot of their dead was buried right in these shelters. They were wrapped in woven basket-type material, I guess out of the yucca cactus and so forth, and buried right in these places. They supposedly started occupying these places as far as 7,000 years ago, and right on through about 3,000 years ago, and some actually up to about 500 years ago, that different tribes that frequented these places.
That yellow iron oxide is very rare. Seldom you see that.
That's true. It looks like the only one in this cave,
Right.
don't it?
So they really drew special attention to that.
They said that there's a white shaman over in the Pecos area, the Pecos River area, that they're not really sure what kind of paint they use to do that with. They think maybe clay mixed with animal fat. Most all of this was, they claim that the way they made it staying picture was that it was mixed with animal fat and crushed rocks and stones of different colors. It's amazing that it's lasted. They say that a lot of this is overpainted, that people would come and they'd overpaint it, paint it over and over again several thousand years ago.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. It really is.
After the thousands of people come here and frequent this place, it's a wonder that it still is as magnificent as it is. That
Mm-hmm.
I think they put these fences and barricades up here probably about 8 or 9 years ago on this particular cave.
Well, I'm glad they did, because these are really, for the age, are in excellent condition, and now they will be kept that way. It's so important that people remember this is part of our heritage.
Very true.
And we should maintain that. See, let's move down where he gets ready to go.
You want to take
No,
this?
go ahead. Go ahead. All right.
About all you can do is just take a look at it and try to, in your own mind, try to figure out what some of these things mean. And it's anybody's guess. The shaman are all
Been a blessing in some way. I can't tell what he's got in his hand. The real tall one there.
right. Now he's got a small head. That could be the bird shaman. I believe that's what that is.
You can make out the beak. And
Right. It was patterned after the eagle, which is in this country even till today. Lots of different animals that it's hard to tell what they are. Some deer and probably animals that lived and existed here in this area back then.
And animals were actually their mainstay. That was their livelihood. That's what kept them alive. And you can see how they would work that into their religion, as well as agility and strength. And
Right. This shaman over here, I don't know. That looks like another bird shaman, don't it? Because it has a small head, and it seems they're all ascending upward, like they're maybe in their mind going from the fleshly body to the spirit world,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Thus, with it being a burial area, would certainly, the shaman might even be releasing souls to
Could be.
to the spirit world.
They seem that their infants, they paid particularly a lot of attention toward their infants when they died. They really had quite elaborate burial systems for their infants. I suppose it'd be the same today, but they seem to pay more attention to the infant children than the adults when they buried them, placing a lot of artifacts with them. I guess things they played with and things like that.
There's some very unusual
That's interesting.
I didn't see that.
Yes. Right next to that one shot.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Marks to it.
Sure does, don't it? But you're right. That orange or yellow looking
Very
shaman is.
unusual. I don't think I've ever seen it before.
Yeah,
That's not the one they call the sun shaman, is it?
well, it could be.
Because
It's
you know,
certainly a different color than the rest.
the goldish yellow from light, and it would seem also that there are eagle feathers for a tail, or to symbolize because the eagle was probably the highest flying. It would certainly seem that
They took a lot of stock in the eagle and the panther, didn't they?
they sure did.
I guess they were the strongest preying animals and birds around at that time. And they probably really respected them.
It would seem that these shaman, whatever this circle that they are releasing, which would be the spirit, makes you wonder if it's new birth, because have they shaped it as a womb purposely for that reason? I mean, a new birth, and when the spirit is released, only they would know. But
It looks like down below that round shaman is 2 feet and then 2 tails, it looks like. Is that what you make of that?
certainly does.
Almost like a beaver maybe, or
Yeah.
something, but only 2 tails on it.
And there were probably beaver on this
Yes,
river.
there still are right now, and I'm sure there were then.
The cross certainly seems strange being there.
That does.
In many of the ancient ones, the cross meant the tribes from all directions, as well as to Christians, it means the cross, of course, that we all are familiar with.
You know, it makes you think that when you look at all these paintings, that probably they were looking for the same God that we know so well, but they were
Absolutely.
looking for him and didn't just really know how to go about it,
Right.
you know.
And it's even scriptural that nature itself witnesses to the Father, and what they see in animal life and everything else, that the ability for an animal or a bird to protect its young, and it's
Well, they definitely knew that there was a human, and they knew the spirit.
yes.
They might not have known exactly what happens there, but they were definitely aware of that. Nearly all the different sites in this area have the same type of shamans, panther, eagles, and so forth, in nearly every one of them. A lot of them are almost identical, as well as could be drawn separately and still look alike. So it was definitely a religion or a way of their thinking at the time. You know, you don't see any reptiles that you can tell, you know, like a snake or something. I just wonder why that they wouldn't have ever.
Usually associated with the netherworld in the majority of religions.
That might have been against their way of thinking,
yes,
wouldn't it?
especially in connection with a burial place,
Yeah.
and would have almost been taboo. Well, I think this is the best large grouping, so well preserved, that we've experienced. Certainly a sight worth seeing.
Well, I'm glad you folks came down.
It was our pleasure, and we certainly thank you for having brought us.
I might add that when the lake rises and comes up, if you folks can come back down, we can certainly see a lot more than this one cave, and I'm sure looking forward to y'all coming back sometime.
We're sure going to do it.
Where we can take in a lot more sights.
Yeah.
You know.
Roughly how many sites would you say are in this area?
There's supposedly about 200 of the sites that contain at least one or more of these rock art paintings. And some of them, of course, are underwater, but I'm not counting those. There was like 300 or 400 of them that was cataloged by the Texas University before they put the lake in. They came in and cataloged what was in the caves and where they were located and so forth before the water came up and covered them up. So we lost a lot of it on account of the water, but there's still around 200 known sites, and they still discover them. Every little while they'll find a new one around on these ranches close by that's never been discovered before.
Which means there had to be quite a population here at one time, and probably spread over a period of hundreds and thousands of years.
That's right. These particular paintings go all the way back to the Devil's River, which is what we came out of when we come under the bridge over at Highway 90, 40 miles back down the lake. Up that river, there are some of these same paintings. Mm. And so in northern Mexico and in this area of about a 50 or 100 mile square here is where most of this type of paintings exist.
Wow. There's a very interesting one right here I want to ask you about. It would seem that we have a shaman, and the deer, I hope the camera will pick this up, seem to be being driven, and especially by a hunter or a war, not necessarily a war chief, but a hunter who has, it would appear, one arrow pointed up and one arrow pointed down as he holds them in his hand, and the deer seem to be going up. And you had mentioned there was a possibility that we see these huge cliffs, that they might have practiced the art of driving over the cliffs for their main winter kill. Or
yes, sir. There is evidence in this area that they did do that they would get a group of men and actually herd animals, deer probably more than anything else, into an area and run them off the cliffs in order to kill them. And then they'd go down, of course, then and utilize all the meat and bones and hides and whatever else that they could use for themselves. And that probably depicts exactly what's going on right there, that they're herding these animals off of a cliff.
And it would seem, as usual, they have a very tall shaman at the, might say, at the end of the drive, with probably seed stalks in his hands, meaning blessings on the hunt or whatever.
Yes, sir.
Provider of the hunt.
And you can almost say, of course, the water has destroyed a lot of that, but the last animal is almost to that shaman that you're referring to there. You can just barely see it right up at the end, right up there.
Oh, yes.
There's some more in between, but you can't see them very well.
And here beside that, we see a very tall shaman, and it would seem again that he's releasing something into the upward spirits or whatever. So again, emphasizing there was a burial spot in this area, as you have found evidence of, as has been found.
Right. That's a large shaman there too.
Very
it looks
large.
What would you say that is? 7 foot or 8 foot, maybe?
I'd say more like 8 feet.
Yeah.
From the very bottom up to his head there, quite a distance.
You know, they had to probably have had some kind of scaffolding, ladders or something to be able to get up there and paint on the overhang up here.
They certainly went to a lot. It took a lot of effort.
That's right. You know, it took a lot of effort just being able to get the paint, the oil or whatever they mixed, you know, to make this paint. If you look all over, you know, they couldn't just readily go out and get it.
Right.
They probably had to prepare that at great length.
Determination. But people in their beliefs, their faiths, and I've always felt, I don't care who you are, you have to have faith in something to even live. And their faith drove them to go to these extents. What amazes me is just off from that shaman, the tall one, you can see something that's very difficult to make out, and it seems like there's some very delicate dots around something that has just been, looks a little like those things they're releasing, whatever they are. A seed pod to life, a womb, or whatever, the spirit, and very delicate, very delicate.
Well, it's truly, like you said, they took a lot of time and effort, and with them trying to get food to eat and to survive, you know, they had some time to do all of this, it seems like. It had to be something very important to them. Well, it would really be interesting to know just how old these are, the oldest
Really
part
would.
of them. It's just hard to say.
We found paint made of this near same substance. Some people call it, say it's red oxide, iron oxide. Some call it red ochre, of whatever mixture they use. We know that had lasted since 800 or 900 AD, and it was in excellent condition. And where these are protected, they would be much, much naturally older than that. And it would seem we have here a horse shaman that is reared up on his hindquarters, and have you heard anyone make mention of that particular shaman?
I haven't. It's hard to. It does certainly look like a horse, all right.
And then there's a huge shaman that comes down where the foot of the shaman or something is. The horse is paying homage to?
Yeah, like he's bowed down to it, don't it?
Right. There is so much detail in the hunter where the drive of the deer, or whatever animal it happens to be, I would assume it is, the detail in the arrow, the headdress, and what seems very unusual to me is one arrow points up and the other is perhaps still in the quiver, if they had such a thing. But
well, I know they used the spear thrower, the atlatl, or whatever how you pronounce that word. That was supposed to be one of their main weapons in those days. They found evidence of some of those.
That could very well be an atlatl too. It could. It's amazing. A professor in Wyoming gave us the opportunity to throw an atlatl, and he was an expert at it, much practice. But even a beginner, the first time I threw it, you could feel when you had the stick in your hand and drove it with force, that in close distances it would have as much thrust as a bow would.
Yeah,
practically.
Tremendous power behind it.
Tremendous power. I notice here we have some red hands right by a shaman, and red hands means death, which really nails down your burial site here. And evidently he's releasing another spirit there. So there you kind of got it all in one picture.
I believe too, if you look close, that's another panther shaman, because
I believe it is.
See his tail coming out here.
Sure is.
And then, like you say, the red hands or claws there. And
yeah, how much better way to say thank you very much for bringing us.
it's been a pleasure, and I hope you can come back, Mr. Mary.
Well, we're going to do it, and if it's all right, I want to release your name and your address so that some of our people can contact you.
Surely.
That would like to see this as well as other sites.
Surely.
And I think it's a very gifted thing you have, that you can share the American heritage with people that can't spend the time necessarily to find places on their own, and that you've dedicated these years of your life to assisting and sharing the heritage of this nation. So,
well, it's very interesting, and like you said, it's something that a lot of folks would enjoy. You know, to
Yes.
come and look at this. It's
I know
spectacular.
I know many of our people are going to be calling you, Charlie, and it's been again a real pleasure. Thank you. And
Thank
God
you very
bless.
much. God bless you.